Welcome to our video about the story of Sarah, one of the most important and influential figures in the Old Testament of the Bible. Sarah was a woman of faith and courage, who faced many challenges in her life, but always remained steadfast in her belief in God. In this video, we will explore the story of Sarah, her struggles and triumphs, and discover how her life can inspire us today. Part 1. Sarah's Journey. Sarah's journey began in Ur of the Chaldeans, a city in ancient Mesopotamia where she was born. She grew up in a family that worshipped many gods, but she was always searching for something more. One day she met a man named Abraham, who would later become her husband and the father of the Hebrew nation. Together, they embarked on a journey that would take them to the Promised Land, a place that God had promised to Abraham and his descendants. Their journey was not easy. They faced many obstacles along the way, including famine, war, and betrayal. In one of the most difficult trials, Sarah was taken as a wife by an Egyptian pharaoh who was attracted to her beauty. Abraham, fearing for his life, allowed this to happen. But God intervened, sending plagues upon the pharaoh's household until he freed Sarah and restored her honor. Despite these challenges, Sarah and Abraham continued on their journey, trusting in God to guide them. They faced many adventures and tests of their faith, but they always persevered, knowing that God had a plan for their lives. Along the way, they met many people, including Hagar, Sarah's maidservant, who became the mother of Abraham's first son, Ishmael. Sarah's journey was marked by faith and courage. She left everything she knew to follow God's call, and she never wavered in her commitment to Him. Her story is a testament to the power of faith and the rewards of obedience to God. Part 2. God's Promise. One of the most significant points in Sarah's story is the promise that God made to her and Abraham that they would have a child. This promise was particularly significant because Sarah was already beyond the age of childbearing, and both she and Abraham had given up hope of ever having children. But God had a different plan in mind. When God first told Abraham about his plan, Abraham fell to the ground in laughter. Sarah also laughed when she overheard the conversation, thinking it was impossible for her to conceive a child at her age. But God was serious, and He reaffirmed His promise to Abraham and Sarah several times over the years. As time went on, Sarah began to trust in God's promise. She stopped seeing herself as old and barren and started believing that God could do the impossible. And one day, to everyone's surprise, Sarah became pregnant and gave birth to a son, whom she named Isaac. Isaac's birth was a miracle, and it was a testament to God's faithfulness and power. Sarah had finally realized that nothing is impossible with God, and that He can fulfill His promises even when circumstances seem impossible. Isaac would go on to become one of the most important patriarchs of the Hebrew nation, and he would continue the legacy of faith and obedience that Sarah had started. God's promise to Sarah showed that He is faithful to His promises, and that He can do the impossible in our lives as well, if we trust in Him. Sarah's story is a reminder that God has a plan for our lives, and that His promises will always come to pass. We may not always understand how or when, but we can trust that God is working behind the scenes to bring about His will. Part 3. Sarah's Legacy. Sarah's legacy did not end with the birth of Isaac. Throughout her life, she had been a faithful servant of God, and her actions inspired others to follow in her footsteps. Her legacy was not only in the son she bore, but also in the way she lived her life. One of Sarah's most admirable qualities was her willingness to follow God's call, even when it meant leaving behind everything she knew and loved. She left her family and homeland to follow her husband on a journey to an unknown land, trusting that God would provide for them along the way. Her faithfulness to God was a model for all who came after her, including her son Isaac, who also followed God's call in his life. Sarah was also known for her hospitality and kindness. When Abraham welcomed 3 strangers into their camp, Sarah went out of her way to prepare a meal for them, showing them kindness and hospitality. Little did she know that these strangers were actually messengers from God, and that they had come to deliver the news of Isaac's birth. Sarah's legacy also included her role as a wife and mother. She was a faithful and loving wife to Abraham, supporting him in his calling and standing by him through the challenges they faced. She was also a devoted mother to Isaac, teaching him about God's promises and instilling in him a love for God. Sarah's story shows us that even in difficult circumstances, we can trust in God's plan for our lives. She was not perfect, but she was a woman of faith and courage who left a lasting impact on those around her. Her legacy continues to inspire us to trust in God's promises, to live lives of faith and obedience, and to show kindness and hospitality to those around us. Conclusion. The story of Sarah is a powerful reminder of God's faithfulness, even in the midst of difficult circumstances. She faced many challenges in her life, including infertility, exile from her homeland, and the loss of her husband. But through it all, she remained faithful to God. Sarah's story is also a testimony to the power of trusting in God's promises. Even though she was old and barren, she believed that God could do the impossible, and He proved her right by giving her a son in her old age. Her unwavering faith is an inspiration to all of us to trust in God's plan, even when it seems impossible. Sarah's legacy lives on through her son Isaac and the generations of people who have been inspired by her story. Her faithfulness, kindness, and hospitality continue to challenge us to live lives that reflect the love and grace of God. As we reflect on Sarah's story, may we be encouraged to trust in God's promises, to live lives of faith and obedience, and to show kindness and hospitality to those around us. May her story remind us that no matter what we face in life, God is always faithful, and His plans for us are always good.